Hi everybody, this is a video about Borrelia and fibromyalgia. Borrelia, of course, being the infamous bacteria that causes Lyme disease. So there was a study that was published in 2022, if memory serves, and basically these researchers looked to see, they took a group of about 27 patients with a fibromyalgia diagnosis. They also did blood tests on them to see if they had the presence of this marker called anti-nuclear antibodies. So basically these antibodies that are attacking the nucleus of the cell, which doesn't sound good because it's not. The ANA is commonly sort of a non-specific blood marker if a person has an autoimmune condition, but there are many patients out there, many whom I've seen in practice, where they'll come in, they've got pain, fatigue, brain fog, neurological issues, whatever it happens to be, and they test positive with the ANA, and so they're like there must be some autoimmune disease going on. But then they see a rheumatologist or work with some other type of specialist where they run a bunch of other blood work and they can't find any more specific laboratory markers. So they say, oh, like this isn't lupus, it's not rheumatoid arthritis, it's not psoriatic arthritis, it's not ankylosing spondylitis. It's we don't know what type of autoimmune condition you have, and some folks, quite frankly, just test positive for ANA and they don't actually have an autoimmune condition. So anywho, the researchers in this study found that there were, so of these 27 fibromyalgia patients, some of them tested positive for the ANA antibodies, these anti-nuclear antibodies, and some were negative for them. And then they ran what's called an ELISpot test. ELISpot testing is different than standard antibody testing, looking for antibodies against Lyme or other infections. ELISpot testing involves looking for T cell activity. So in the post-COVID world, a lot of folks have heard about T cells now. B cells ultimately produce our antibodies. T cells are a different type of immune system response. So this test, which looks for T cell activity, was done on all these patients, and they basically found that the patients with a fibromyalgia diagnosis that were ANA positive, they had a notably higher level of anti-Borrelia activity or anti-Borrelia T cells than the folks who were ANA negative. So the conclusions that were drawn from this study were that folks with fibromyalgia diagnosis who have these ANA antibodies were much more likely to have this Borrelia activity in their body. This is something that I think is clinically relevant. It's actually really great to see this study come out, because in my clinical experience and the experience of many of my colleagues and mentors who work in the field of complex chronic illness, we see this all the time, that folks with a fibromyalgia diagnosis, they wind up testing positive for and or responding to treatment for chronic infections with microbes like the Lyme bacteria, Borrelia burgdorferi. Sometimes it's other microbes, sometimes there are other things going on too, of course. Many times there's other things going on as well, but this is something that we see on a regular basis. So it's nice to see some research looking at this this important topic, I would say. Over the years, I had a number of patients come to see me saying, like, yeah, I've heard you can help people with fibromyalgia, I have fibromyalgia. It's like, okay, well, has anybody done any exploration to see what's causing that? Like, well, I have fibromyalgia, like that's just what I have, like that's the disease. Like, well, that's the label that you've been given that describes all the symptoms you have, but like what causes fibromyalgia? And they're like, oh, I've never thought about that before, or oh, like nobody knows. It's like, granted, there's no if you look in the Merck manual or some other textbook that talks about different diagnoses and whatnot, it is true that fibromyalgia is generally considered to be this idiopathic condition, meaning nobody's figured out what causes it yet. However, when we see what actually works in clinical practice, when I treat a patient with anti-infectious herbs or other nutraceuticals or what have you, and their fibromyalgia symptoms get better or go away, for that person, at least in my opinion, the infection was causing their fibromyalgia. And other folks, they get treated for mold illness and their fibromyalgia symptoms go away. And that patient, it seems that the fibromyalgia was being caused by mold illness, and the list can go on and on. So again, interesting research, I think very relevant to anyone who has a fibromyalgia diagnosis, and I hope that this information is useful. And if anybody has any questions or comments about this topic, please just post in the comment section below. And if it's a question, I'll answer ASAP. If it's a comment, I'll read it and respond. Thanks.